I remember years ago, I was praying a lot at the time, and I expected God to show me Bible verses and significant things. But the details that kept coming up everywhere I turned was on narcissism. Now, to be honest, I didn't think much of the word at the time. But then I later understood why God was taking me through the process of learning about narcissism. It's because it's opposite of everything God is. Then I started my channel and I spoke a lot about narcissism. And boy, did I amass a lot of enemies. I did, because a lot of people thought I was referring to them. Well, I was, but not in the way they were thinking. We all have some sort of narcissistic trait in us, which means we have bad habits. Doesn't mean we're narcissists. Now, in a lifetime, a lot of people will encounter one or more narcissists. Not a lot of people will encounter what you call a covert narcissist. Rarely spoken about. Not a lot of information out there because it's not common. The only people that will encounter the covert narcissist are people with a calling over their lives, 10 times more dangerous and 100 times more subtle than the usual narcissist. So you're not aware of anything until the damage has been done. Now, having a calling over your life doesn't necessarily mean you have to operate within the confines of religion. You could be a doctor, a singer, a painter, a teacher, or even a minister of God. But whatever you do, people are moved, people are blessed, people are healed. You do it with uncommon grace, and you make a difference in the world. The whole point of a covert narcissist strategically placed in your life is so that you do not achieve your purpose. And if you do, they aim to bring you down. An example you may be able to relate to is Judas Iscariot in the Christian religion, and is referred to as covert because he was perfectly disguised in Jesus' life as a disciple, a friend, and a brother, not an enemy. Covert means undercover, secret, hidden. Unlike the traditional narcissists who are overt, they are boisterous, boastful, arrogant, usually behavioral patterns that can be easily observed by others. The latter is hidden, sneaky, and very covert. A study implies that covert narcissism usually stems from childhood. Now, this analysis may trigger a lot of people to gloss over it as carefully as I can. Now, the narcissistic behavior is usually acquired sometimes when a child is ridiculously overprivileged. They may become self-centered and very entitled. Or when a child is ridiculously underprivileged, they may become very envious and very entitled. Covert narcissism is actually quite different. Many of these are children that have experienced some form of abuse, usually of a sexual nature. There's a lot of details that goes into it, and because of the time, I can't really get into it. But what happens eventually is that their consciousness gets stuck in the timeline of when the abuse happened. And because of that trauma, they never really evolve emotionally. So they're grown, but emotionally, they're still the age of 7, 8, 9, 10. They believe they're extra special because their pain, their suffering, and experiences are more intense, more important, and more dramatic than anyone else's. Their grief is deeper than your grief. Their pain is more searing than your pain. And for this, they deserve your undying attention, loyalty, love, and servitude. They position themselves as victims, and your empathy towards them feeds their need for attention. Now, covert narcissists are quite prone to depression and can be quite emotionally dysregulated. They come across as borderline because they seem so vulnerable, anxious, fragile, and full of worry. They act like they care about you and can seem so generous. And this creates cognitive dissonance for you because the idea or perception of who the person is versus the reality of who they really are is so different. Everything is under the radar. Another term for this type of abuse is the ambient abuse, which creates a feeling of intimidation, predictability, irritation, or fear. It includes things like facial expression, Sighing, huffing, long silences, strange patterns of behavior, things you can't quite put your finger on. And if you try to explain it to anybody else, you sound like you're exaggerating or you're being overly sensitive. Here are some of the signs you'll notice when dealing with a covert narcissist. 1. You're walking on eggshells and you feel constantly stressed out. You don't want to ruffle any feathers or say anything. 2. They counter everything you say to create an argument. 3. They deliberately try to get under your skin. You feel exhausted or depressed around them. 5. They are emotionally immature. 6. You make yourself smaller to accommodate them. You may feel the need to dumb down your vocabulary or dress a bit more conservatively. You become very careful with what you say and not to criticize them because they are overly sensitive to criticism. And finally, you feel the need to hide your success and your wins. Whilst the traditional overt narcissist wants to be the god in your life, they want you to look up to them, to depend on them, to bow to them, to worship them, to serve them. The covert narcissist, on the other hand, is there to discredit God in your life, to sway you towards idolizing yourself or idolizing other false gods. An example of that is the serpent in Genesis that told Eve that God had lied and deceived them, and if they ate of the tree, they would become exactly like God. Namaste.